So yesterday's video was all about analyzing the graph of f prime. So if I give you the graph of the derivative of the function, can you answer some questions about it? The reason that that is so important is that that is pretty much a guaranteed AP test FRQ question. So what I'm going to show you right now is an actual AP sample question from the 2000 AP test. Now we're going to do a bunch of these to practice tomorrow in class. Basically, they're going to give you one of these every single year on the AP test. Here's what the directions say. The figure above, it's actually on the right-hand side this time, shows the graph of f prime. The first thing I want you to pause and say to yourself is, hey, I'm looking at the graph of the derivative. Between -7 and 7, so it's a closed interval, the graph of this derivative has horizontal tangent lines at -3, 2, and 5. Now, horizontal tangent line is telling you that that's a high point or a low point, because horizontal tangent line means the slope is 0. It's basically just telling you that so that you know you're not estimating that the lowest point here is -3. The highest point here happens at 2, and the lowest point here happens at 5. And then it says that I have a vertical tangent line at x equals 3. So vertical tangent means that at x equals 3, the slope of this graph would be undefined. All right, now part A says find all the values between -7 and 7. So we're looking at an open interval at which f attains a relative minimum. The key word here is the word minimum. We are looking for places that would have been minimums on the original graph. Now another key here is that this is an open interval. So we don't care about the endpoints. So that really tricky idea of like, is the endpoint a max or is the endpoint a min, where you kind of have to sketch a picture to estimate, doesn't need to be applied here because they're telling us don't worry about the endpoints. I know that when I'm looking for a minimum, I'm looking for places where I switch from having a negative slope to a positive slope, which means I'm looking for switching between below and above. Now, all of this red stuff is going on in my head. These are things I should be noticing and things I should be thinking to solve this problem. On the actual paper, here's what I'm going to write. I notice I switch between below and above here, and there are no other points where I switch between below and above. So I would say I have a relative min at x equals -1. And then I'm thinking, how do I justify my answer? So I would say because f prime, which is the graph I'm looking at, you always want to refer to the graph you're looking at, because f prime changes from negative, because it was below, to positive, because it was above. Now, in part B, they're asking me to explain where I would have a maximum. As soon as I see this interval, I'm saying, okay, I don't need to worry about endpoints. Because it's an open interval. I also know I'm thinking of maximums, which means I want to go uphill and then downhill. In other words, above to below. So that would occur at -5, and I'm not seeing any other places where that would occur. So I would say relative max at x equals -5 because f prime, because you always want to refer to what you actually have, which is f prime, changes from positive to negative. Oh, you can't see anything I just wrote down. Let me go ahead and move that up. And let me have you read that and copy it. Again, we're saying we have a maximum at -5 because f prime changes from positive to negative. Finally, the last question they're asking me here is find all of the places where the second derivative is less than 0. In other words, we're looking for where we have a negative slope, because the second derivative would be the slopes of this graph. Now, I would say second derivative is negative here, and the second derivative is negative here. But there's a catch. Remember this point that they told me about that said that the slope was undefined? When I write my intervals, I need to make sure that that value is not included because the slope there is undefined. So I would say I have a negative slope from -7 to -3, and you'll notice they told me to use the open intervals. Then I have a negative slope from 2 to 3, and I'm making that open because I know that it's undefined there, and then from 3 to 5. So I would say this is open because my value is undefined, and you don't have to write this part down. I just want to make a note to ourselves that that's why that's a separate interval. We can't just say from 2 to 5. All right, that is a sample AP question. It pretty much just takes what we already know and it applies it in an AP context. So I will see you in class tomorrow, and we're going to practice a whole bunch of an AP questions.